Vanessa. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. I want to talk to you guys about something I call music in the age of free. It's not exactly free, but it's practically free. These days you can listen to almost anything, any song you want, anytime, anywhere, and if it's not free, it's pretty darn cheap. And the thing is that music is almost free to listen to, but it's not almost free to produce and to make. And I want to talk a little bit about how we got here and where we're headed. The album age is what historians refer to as the time period from about 1965 to 2000. This was the time when, prior to that, music was released on 45s, just two songs on a little piece of plastic vinyl. In the mid-60s is when music started to be released as an album. And you may be familiar with the adage of the medium is the message. Well, this was basically a time when pop music decided to change the message about itself, and it decided to present itself as artwork. It was no longer just singles. It was a collection of songs that were grouped together with the album art. There were the liner notes. There were the photos of the band. There were sometimes posters included. It was a whole piece of art that they were presenting. And we found that albums were a very sticky medium. Albums make fans because they're a very immersive medium. It's not something that you just put on in the background. It's something that you tended to interact with. It required a lot of effort to go purchase that album, especially if you were a young teenager and you had to mow a lawn or you had to babysit in order to earn the money to go buy it. And then you went and you picked up the record and you took it home and you really studied it. You put it on, you listened to it, you read the lyrics, and you really got to know it. And in doing so, you became a big fan of that artist. Well, artists that came about during the album age from 65 to 2000 are still, even today, the top earners. This is a partial list of the musicians that made the most money last year. Most of these people have been in the music business over 30 years. Some of them, Barbra Streisand, has been making music for more than 50. And it's a little surprising to see some of these names are still the top of the list, but it is in large part due to the fact that these musicians created a fan base during the album age, and they have an incredibly loyal and sticky fan base because of that. So this is the album age right here. You'll see that from about 65 to 2000, there were 32 different artists that sold more than 30 million copies of a record. In the year 2000, you'll see that something changed pretty drastically because in the last 15 years, only one artist has been able to achieve that number. The album age is dead. And it's dead in part because of the internet. So around 99 and 2000 is when Napster took off. It's when it became possible to basically download music in digital format. A couple of years later, iTunes came online, and iTunes at that point allowed you to purchase the music. You weren't just downloading it illegally. You could go ahead and purchase a single or an album. But you'll note that even though it was possible to buy the album, sales continued to decline because at this point, listening habits had begun to change because we changed the medium, and in doing so, we changed the message. This chart doesn't really show, but around 2009 is when streaming really came online, and Spotify and Pandora kind of came into the mix as well. Here's what streaming does to someone like me. So I'm an independent musician. I've made 8 records by myself without a record label. I have paid for all of those out of my own pocket. When I was on tour, I could sell 1,000 CDs at $10 a pop. Usually it takes about $10,000 sort of bare minimum to make a record. And that's just the money that you spend in the studio. That's the musicians you hire, that's the rental of the studio time, the producer, the engineer, the mixing, the mastering. All of that adds up because you're paying a lot of people that have very specialized skill sets, and it's not free to make. So assuming that it would cost about 10, if I were able to sell 1,000 CDs on the road, which as an independent artist, that's a totally achievable number. I would usually sell 2,000 or 3,000 a year when I was touring. Now, in order to make the same amount of money, I would need 2 million Spotify streams at that lovely little payout number right there. And that's just to break even. That doesn't allow me to actually have an income to pay my bills, to pay my rent, to do anything else. That's just to pay off the cost of making the record. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to find the revenue stream in order to keep making records going forward, even in a time when the internet has given us so many tools to be able to release albums without having a record label. This sort of ironic thing is that it's becoming almost impossible to sustain it financially. So these are some of the things that are being posited and put forth to us. I guess the different tools that the internet has given musicians to try to make it in this new world. YouTube is one of the revenue sources that we're often told is going to save us with ad revenues, and crowdsourcing is a big one that I'm going to get to in a minute. But you'll see here that there's pretty much no more mention of selling the album anymore, of the physical album. And one of the things that has struck me, at least on a personal level, is I feel like when we changed from primarily physical albums to digital music, we changed the medium in a pretty drastic way. If I were to play a show for you tonight, and then after the show I were to tell you I've got CDs for sale in the back, and you come back there, and I have a bunch of CDRs that I burned on my home computer, and I wrote Vanessa Peters on them and said they were $10 each, you would probably not be inclined to buy the CD, because you would probably think that not a lot of effort went into making it. You wouldn't take me very seriously as a musician. Well, essentially that's what we've done. We've taken away the physical widget that you as the fan used to see when you would come to the merchandise table, and you would see it and you would hold it and you would be sort of curious and you would turn it over and you would look at the songs on the back and you would think, oh, this is an album I might be interested in listening to. You don't really have that interaction anymore, or at least on a much smaller level than we used to, because by and large people these days listen to their music on iTunes or on Spotify. And I think in changing the message, we sort of have detached the listener from the musician. We've sort of made it harder to appreciate how much work goes into making it, and the fact that even though it's really, really cheap to listen to, it's not cheap to produce. So then we come to crowdfunding, and everybody says, well, first it was going to be download. You could sell your music on iTunes, and that was going to make you enough money, and then that didn't work. The whole streaming thing doesn't work. So then we get to crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a pretty fantastic thing. I've actually funded most of my albums through crowdfunding even before Kickstarter existed. I would just send an email to my fans and say, hey, I'm making this new record. If you want to pre-order it, here's the PayPal address, and I would finance it that way. So I think crowdfunding is a really great thing. The really important thing to remember about crowdfunding, though, is that it really only works when you have a pre-existing fan base. It's really hard for a brand new artist to raise the money to make a record if they don't already have fans. These are some numbers that Kickstarters themselves released just a few weeks ago. You hear a lot about these musicians that raise $100,000, $200,000, $1 million on Kickstarter. It's important to note that the majority of them raise less than 10. 10 is sort of the minimum threshold that you're going to need to make a record. That 20% of submissions rejected by Kickstarter is actually a number. Those are artists that try to submit a project and Kickstarter decides those are never going to be funded, so they don't even go live. And then 40% of them never even reach whatever their minimum is. So crowdfunding, while it's a great tool, is still not the final answer for us. So these are some of the things that are going to help us going forward. But really the most important thing on there is fans and benefactors. And we talked a lot today about how the world is changing a lot and how we tend to get detached from one another, and how important it is to stay grounded and keep interacting with one another. And I guess the thing that I would ask all of you guys is to remember that we as musicians still need fans. We still need people that support us, that come out to shows, people that really believe in what we're doing and support it in a concrete way. I was thinking about the video from earlier where the guy said he did this thing for 30 days. It is important to actually give concrete support to an artist. And I would challenge you guys to do something that a friend of mine, David, has challenged some of his listeners to do as well. If you use this like a streaming service, if you use Spotify, use it for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, take a look and see what the thing is that you've been listening to the most. If you keep returning to an album over and over again, go buy it. Don't just stream it. Don't just assume that because you're streaming, you're helping that artist make another record. If you can't afford to buy it, tell 5 other people about it. Go on Twitter, go on Facebook, share the links, and don't assume that just because you found it, that it's easy to find. We all need to be more interactive in trying to spread the word and get it out there as much as possible. I think I'm going to wrap up right there before I lose my voice too. Otherwise this song will be a little hard to sing. This song is going to be on my next record, and it's a song called New Year. It's a song I wrote when I was sort of struggling with all of this back at the beginning of the year, trying to figure out whether or not I really wanted to keep making music in a world where things were changing so fast I wasn't even sure if I could really keep up with everything. And I still don't know if I can keep up with everything or not, but I'm going to keep trying. So I think if there's one thing I've learned tonight is that we all do need to keep trying and not be overwhelmed by how fast things are moving and how fast things are changing. This is a post-X world, it's a post-XYZ world, whatever it is, we're still living in it, we're still in it now, and we need to try to embrace and support each other in it for as long as we're here. So, check 1, 2, maybe? You got it back there? Cool.
Pull off the screwed on top and watch the bubbles burst. Watch the liquid fizz, then feel your heart immersed in all the crazy hiss of 1,000 tiny words whispered in your ear by 1,000 tiny birds who were flying oh so near. But they came a little closer, they lift up their tiny wings, their humming hearts were whirring. You couldn't hear a thing. Let's do this, we can fix it. We've only got to twist it, bend it, make it fit into the box we've made for it. We've got this and we've got to try. There's nothing left but do or die. We've got to pull this off. We've got to pull this off. And don't even try to stop me, 'cause I won't stand for it and I won't be slain. I am not a heart to be won. I'm not the sleeve you're gonna wear it on. I'm not hiding out in dark caves on the outskirts of the city while it burns. I am not a script you're gonna study. I'm not a lesson to be learned. But they came a little closer, they were flying oh so near, and you could hear a pin drop, and everything was clear. Let's do this, we can fix it. We've only got to twist it, bend it, make it fit into the box we've made for it. We've got this and we've got to try. There's nothing left but do or die. We've got to pull this off. We've got to pull this off. But oh, what fun it was when days were long and full of sun, when knees were scraped and friends were made, and then friendships came undone. Let's do this, we can fix it. We've only got to twist it, bend it, make it fit into the box we've made for it. We've got this and we've got to try. There's nothing left but do or die. We've got to pull this off. We've got to pull this off.
Thank you.